Imagine waking up to find your bank account emptied overnight. Not because you lost your wallet, but because someone, somewhere, silently slipped through the digital cracks and stole your credentials. Or consider a hospital system that suddenly can't access patient records because ransomware has locked everything down. These aren't just scenes from a thriller. They're real events happening every day around the world, often without warning. In a world where businesses, governments, and individuals rely on digital networks to function, securing those networks has become a foundational part of keeping society running. Network security isn't just about installing antivirus software or setting a good password anymore. It's a multi-layered discipline that touches everything from the physical equipment in server rooms to the policies that shape employee behavior. This video explores the key pillars of network security. We'll start by breaking down the physical elements: cameras, motion detectors, card readers, and biometric systems. These protect the places where infrastructure lives. Then we'll dig into authentication and access control systems, the gatekeepers that decide who gets in and what they're allowed to do. We'll also look at some of the most common and dangerous network attacks, like phishing, ransomware, and denial of service, and the strategies used to fight back. Finally, we'll talk about the policies and training that help build a culture of security across organizations. Throughout this video, we'll tie in real-world examples and best practices so the material doesn't just stay theoretical. It connects with the kinds of situations you'll face in the real world, whether you're working in IT, managing a team, or just trying to understand how to keep your personal information safe. Let's get started by exploring the physical side of network security, the devices and systems that form the first line of defense. When most people think about cybersecurity, they picture firewalls, encryption, or maybe someone typing furiously at a terminal. But physical security, the locks, cameras, detectors, and access points in the real world, forms the actual foundation of network safety. After all, if someone can walk right into your server room and plug in a rogue device, or walk off with a hard drive, it doesn't matter how good your logical defenses are. Physical access almost always means total access. So let's start with surveillance systems, which are essentially the eyes and ears of any physical security setup. Organizations use a mix of surveillance cameras, fixed position, pan tilt zoom, PTZ, and even infrared models that work in low light conditions. These cameras are placed in high value or high risk locations like server rooms, data centers, and communications closets. Take, for instance, Equinox, one of the largest global data center providers. Their facilities are monitored 24/7 with multiple layers of surveillance, including biometric verification and cameras that provide real-time feeds to remote security teams. Many organizations are now integrating these camera systems with network monitoring dashboards, meaning a network administrator can check on both digital and physical systems from one screen, no matter where they're physically located. Pairing with cameras are motion detectors, which act like an invisible tripwire. They're most valuable in spaces where people shouldn't normally be. Think data centers, after hours, or locked telecom closets. These sensors, whether they use infrared, ultrasonic, or microwave technology, detect unusual movement and can instantly trigger alerts, activate recordings, or even lock down physical access points. For example, many smart buildings today use motion detection not just for intrusion, but for energy efficiency, security automation, and emergency protocols. What makes this all useful, though, is logging. Every time someone walks past a camera, triggers a motion detector, or scans a badge to enter a secure room, that action can and should be logged. These logs can prove critical in investigating a breach or just tracking usage patterns. Think about a scenario where sensitive equipment went missing from a locked room. With proper logs, you can see who entered, when, and possibly even what happened via video footage. But logs are only useful if they're stored securely, protected from tampering, and regularly backed up. Many organizations now treat log data with the same sensitivity they give to customer data or financial records. Of course, hardware only works well if it's maintained. A dusty lens, a broken motion sensor, or a full storage device can render the entire system useless. That's why regular testing and maintenance is a best practice in any serious security setup. This means routine inspections, software updates for smart systems, and verifying alert mechanisms are working just as expected. Just as important as ensuring coverage and visibility, you'd be surprised how many breaches happen because a camera was pointed at the wrong angle or there was a blind spot in a hallway. A well-designed surveillance system should have no major gaps, especially in high-risk zones. It's not just about having tech, it's about placing it smartly. And don't forget about the legal side of things. Compliance with privacy laws is critical, especially with regulations like GDPR in Europe and HIPAA in healthcare environments. Surveillance can't just be about security. It has to be ethically and legally sound. Many companies are now adding signage to notify employees and visitors that surveillance is in use, which is often a legal requirement that helps build transparency. Now, let's talk about access control, because spotting someone on camera after they've already entered a secure area is often too little too late. The first line of defense here is often card readers. These can be swipe cards, proximity cards, or more advanced smart cards. They're fast, reliable, and can log who enters where and when. But they're not foolproof. If someone loses a badge or lends it out, security is compromised. That's why more sensitive environments combine card readers with biometric systems. Biometrics, like fingerprint scanners, facial recognition, or iris scanners, are difficult to fake and impossible to lend to a friend. They're increasingly common in high-security industries, including finance and healthcare. Apple's latest Face ID technology, for example, uses a depth-sensing camera to verify identity with remarkable accuracy. And we're seeing similar systems in enterprise environments. But there's a trade-off. Biometric systems raise privacy concerns and are subject to strict data protection regulations. Unlike a password, you can't change your fingerprint. So, if that data gets leaked, it poses a unique and lasting risk. Some high-security spaces also use man-traps, a setup involving two locked doors that only open one at a time. When a person enters the first door, it closes behind them. They must authenticate again before the second door opens. This system prevents tailgating, where someone tries to sneak in behind an authorized user. Airports, data centers, and defense contractors often use man-traps to keep sensitive areas secure. Taken together, these tools, surveillance, motion detectors, logging, card readers, biometrics, and man-traps, create a layered defense system. This is what's called an integrated security approach. Instead of relying on a single barrier, you build multiple layers of protection that reinforce each other. If one fails, another is still there to stop the threat. To keep this layered system effective, organizations need regular updates and audits. Technology changes fast, and so do the tactics of attackers. What worked last year might not cut it today. Regular audits help spot weak spots, outdated systems, or compliance gaps. For example, the recent surge in AI-powered security cameras offers new tools like facial recognition and behavior analytics. But it also introduces new ethical and technical challenges. Staying current isn't just smart, it's necessary. Finally, none of this matters if the people using the systems don't understand them. That's where training and awareness come in. Every employee, from IT staff to receptionist, plays a role in physical security. They should know what to do if they see someone without a badge in a restricted area or an alarm goes off unexpectedly. Regular drills, signage, and awareness programs can make a big difference. According to a 2023 IBM security report, organizations that invest in staff training experience 60% fewer physical security incidents than those who don't. In the end, physical security is the unsung hero of network protection. It's not flashy, and it doesn't get as much attention as firewalls or encryption. But without it, everything else is vulnerable. By combining good technology with smart policies and human awareness, Organizations can create a physical defense that supports and strengthens their entire security strategy. While physical devices protect the front doors of your network, authentication and access controls determine what someone can do once they're inside, or even if they should be allowed at all. In a digital environment, you can't rely on a handshake or a security guard. Instead, you need systems that verify identity, define permissions, and track activity. That's where the AAA framework comes in: authentication, authorization, and accounting. It's like a digital bouncer, manager, and bookkeeper all rolled up into one. Let's start with authentication, which simply asks, are you who you say you are? This can be as simple as entering a username and a password. But as we all know, passwords are often weak, reused, or even stolen. According to a recent Verizon data breach report, over 80% of hacking-related breaches involved compromised credentials. So modern systems go further, layering in additional checks. You might get a one-time code via text, need to scan a fingerprint, or log in using a secure app. These extra steps are what's known as multi-factor authentication, or MFA. The idea is to combine different kinds of factors to strengthen identity verification. Something you know, like a password, something you have, like a phone or a token, and something you are, like a fingerprint or facial scan. Some systems even use location data, blocking access if the login attempt comes from a country where the user has never been, or behavioral data like typing rhythm or mouse movement. These layers make it much harder for an attacker to gain access, even if they have your password. MFA can feel like a hassle sometimes, but it's effective. Google reported in 2021 that simply adding a second factor, like a phone prompt, blocked over 99% of automated attacks on their users' accounts. That's a huge payoff for a very small inconvenience. Once someone is authenticated, the next question is authorization. Okay, you're in, but what are you allowed to do? This is where permissions come in. A regular employee shouldn't have the same access as a network administrator, and someone in sales shouldn't be poking around in the payroll data. That's why many organizations use role-based access control, or RBAC. In RBAC, access rights are assigned based on the person's role rather than individual settings for each user. So when someone moves departments or gets promoted, you just change their role and their access updates automatically. There are other models too. Discretionary access control, DAC, allows users to control who can access their own files. Think about sharing a Google Doc with your coworkers. Meanwhile, mandatory access control, MAC, is stricter, typically found in military or government environments. In MAC, access is based on classification levels, and users can't change permissions themselves. It's rigid, but necessary when handling sensitive data. Next is the accounting part of AAA, which doesn't mean billing, although it can in some contexts. Here, accounting refers to tracking what users do once they're on the network. When did they log in? What files did they access? Did they try to connect to something they shouldn't? This kind of auditing is crucial for detecting threats, maintaining compliance, and investigating issues after the fact. Tools like SIM platforms pull together logs from across the network and use ML and AI to spot anomalies that might indicate a breach. Behind the scenes, AAA often relies on protocols like Radius and TACACS. These are systems that handle the heavy lifting of verifying users and managing permissions. Radius is commonly used for network access, like when you log into a Wi-Fi at a university or workplace. TACACS, on the other hand, is often used for managing access to devices like routers and switches. Both can be integrated into central directory services like Active Directory, giving administrators a unified way to manage users across all systems. What does best practice look like in all of this? First, there needs to be consistency in policies. That means having the same rules and access policies across your system so that nobody slips through the cracks. It also means reviewing those policies regularly to make sure they're still relevant and effective. Second, organizations need strong authentication mechanisms. Weak passwords and single-factor logins just don't cut it anymore. Requiring MFA, especially for high-privileged accounts or remote access, is one of the most impactful steps a company can take. Even better if it includes biometrics or hardware tokens like YubiKeys, which have become popular in security-focused industries. Third, regular audits and reviews are essential. It's not enough to set permissions once and forget them. People change roles. They leave the company or take on new projects. And if access isn't adjusted accordingly, you're left with outdated and potentially risky configurations. In 2022, a major data breach at an enterprise cloud platform was traced back to an old contractor account that hadn't been disabled after the project ended. Avoidable? Absolutely. Now let's take a closer look at the technologies that support multi-factor authentication, since it's become the gold standard in verifying identity. We mentioned earlier there are different factors used in MFA. Let's unpack those. Knowledge factors are something you know, like passwords or PINs. Possession factors are something you have, like a mobile phone, a smart card, or a USB security key. Inherence factors are things that you are, fingerprints, voice, facial structure. Location factors rely on where you are, which can be tracked by IP address or GPS. And behavioral factors might include how you type, how fast you swipe, or even how you walk. Each factor adds another layer of security, but it also increases the complexity. The trick is finding the right balance. For most consumer applications, a password and a phone prompt via an authentication app like Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator is enough. But for access to medical records or financial systems, you might need biometric verification and a hardware token. There are also practical considerations. SMS and email-based codes are better than nothing, but they can be intercepted or spoofed. Authentication apps are more secure since they generate time-based codes locally. Hardware tokens are even stronger because they can't be phished and don't rely on a network. But they also cost more and can be lost. When it comes to biometrics, there's that privacy question again. Collecting and storing fingerprint or facial data requires careful handling, not just to protect users' identities, but also to comply with laws like the Biometric Information Privacy Act in Illinois or GDPR in Europe. Organizations need to be transparent on how biometric data is collected, stored, and used. They need to give users alternatives when possible. To keep things running smoothly, MFA systems should also have backup methods in place. If someone loses their phone or forgets a hardware token, there should be a secure process to recover access, ideally without making it easy for attackers to exploit. Best practices here include regular review and update of authentication policies, keeping up with new threats and technologies. Employees should also receive training on how to use MFA tools properly, what phishing attempts look like, and why they shouldn't reuse passwords, even for work-related accounts. And it's a smart move to integrate MFA with identity management systems so users can have single sign-on access to multiple services without compromising security. Access control isn't just about locking things down. It's about allowing the right people in, tracking what they do, and keeping that process flexible but secure. With the right mix of authentication, authorization, and accounting, plus technologies like MFA and centralized management, organizations can drastically reduce their risk exposure while keeping systems accessible for the people who need them. Let's face it, no matter how many locks you put on the doors or how well you manage user permissions, there will always be someone trying to break in. That's just the nature of the digital world we live in. Cyber attacks are constant, evolving, and sometimes even automated. So understanding the kinds of attacks that can happen and how to respond is one of the most valuable tools you can have in your network security toolbox. Let's start with one of the most disruptive and headline-grabbing forms of attack, distributed denial of service, or DDoS. DDoS attacks flood a network or website with so much traffic, it simply can't respond to real users. It's like trying to walk into a store, but there's a mob of hundreds of people standing in the doorway shouting nonsense. You can't get in, and the business can't operate. These attacks are often launched from botnets, networks of infected computers or smart devices that have been hijacked and turned into zombie machines. One of the most famous examples was the 2016 attack on Dyn, a major DNS provider. This attack temporarily knocked out access to major websites like Netflix, Twitter, and Reddit across the US. So how do you defend against something like this? It takes a mix of traffic filtering, rate limiting, and often partnering with cloud-based anti-DDoS services like Cloudflare or Akamai. These companies can detect and absorb large volumes of malicious traffic before it reaches your servers. Phishing is one of the oldest tricks in the cybercrime playbook, but it's still wildly effective. It usually comes in the form of an email that looks legitimate. Maybe it pretends to be from your bank or your company's IT department. but it's designed to trick you into giving up sensitive information like passwords or credit card numbers. And phishing isn't just email anymore. Now we have smishing, phishing via SMS, and vishing, voice phishing via phone calls. In 2023, there was a huge uptick in phishing campaigns that used QR codes to bypass email filters. One campaign impersonated Microsoft Outlook's login screens and tricked users into scanning QR codes that led to malicious login portals. The best defense against phishing is a combination of email filtering tools and user education. Spam filters and AI-powered detection systems can catch a lot of these attempts, but no system is perfect. That's why training people to recognize suspicious emails and never click links or download attachments from unknown sources is still essential. Now let's talk about something a bit more technical, the man-in-the-middle attack. In this kind of attack, the bad actor secretly intercepts the communication between two parties. Imagine you think you're logging into your bank account, but someone's in the middle, reading and possibly altering the data without your knowledge. It's like sending a letter and having a stranger open it, change the content, and reseal it before it gets delivered. These attacks can happen over unsecured Wi-Fi networks or through compromised routers or malicious browser extensions. That's why you should never log in to sensitive accounts over public Wi-Fi without a VPN, and why websites use HTTPS encryption to secure data in transit. Also, multi-factor authentication helps mitigate damage even if credentials are intercepted. There are also attacks that exploit weaknesses in web applications like SQL injection and cross-site scripting. A SQL injection happens when an attacker sends malicious code to a web form, say a search box or a login field, and tricks the database into executing unintended commands. This can allow access to sensitive data or even control of the database. Cross-site scripting, on the other hand, involves injecting malicious scripts into websites so that when other users visit the page, the code runs in their browsers. This can be used to steal session cookies, redirect users, or plant fake login prompts. These vulnerabilities are often preventable with good development practice. That means input validation, prepared statements, and regular code reviews, especially when user input is involved. Then there's ransomware, a type of malware that locks you out of your files and demands payment to restore access. In 2021, the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack disrupted fuel delivery across the southeastern United States, showing just how serious these attacks can be. Ransomware typically spreads through phishing emails or by exploiting outdated software. That's why regular patching, backups, and incident response plans are essential. And many companies now run simulations, like fake ransomware drills, to test how quickly and effectively teams can respond. Another dangerous category is the zero-day exploit. These are attacks that take advantage of software vulnerabilities that the vendor doesn't even know about yet. Because there's no fix available at the time of the attack, these can be particularly devastating. The key to reducing zero-day risk is having layered defenses in place, like firewalls, intrusion prevention systems, and good monitoring tools that can detect abnormal behavior. Some companies even use threat intelligence feeds to stay ahead of new vulnerabilities being discussed or sold on the dark web. Finally, we have insider threats, security breaches that come from within the organization. This could be a disgruntled employee or a careless contractor, or even someone who just made an honest mistake, like clicking on the wrong link or losing a laptop with unencrypted data. According to the 2024 report, insider threats account for over 30% of data breaches and are among the most expensive to recover from. Defending against them means more than just technology. You need a strong culture of security, well-defined access controls, and regular training to help people recognize risky behavior. So how do we tie all these together? The most effective mitigation strategies combine technology, policy, and education. Here are some of the best practices that every organization should follow. First, keep your systems updated. It's boring, but it works. Most attacks succeed by targeting known vulnerabilities that already have patches available. A solid patch management process can cut your risk dramatically. Next, implement strong firewalls and intrusion prevention systems. These act like your network's immune system, detecting and blocking suspicious traffic before it can cause harm. Make sure they're updated and properly configured. Misconfigured firewalls are a common weak spot. Security awareness training is also essential. Teach employees how to recognize phishing, use secure passwords, and report suspicious activity. It's often said that people are the weakest link in security, but they can also be the first line of defense if they're properly trained. And lastly, run regular security audits and assessments. Whether you use internal tools or bring in third-party experts, these checkups can identify vulnerabilities you didn't know existed and ensure that your security policies are being followed. Here's the truth. Cyber attacks aren't going away, but by understanding how they work and putting smart defenses in place, you can dramatically reduce the risk and bounce back faster if something does go wrong. We've talked about the physical protections, digital access controls, and many types of cyber attacks organizations face. But all of that relies on one final piece: people. And people need clear guidance and regular training to stay secure. That's where strong security policies and ongoing education come in. Think of security policies as the rule book for how an organization protects its information and systems. Without that rule book, everyone's guessing. And in security, guessing leads to gaps, mistakes, and eventually breaches. Creating good security policies start with understanding what you're up against. This means performing a risk assessment. What kind of data does your organization handle? Where is it stored? Who has access? And what would happen if it got leaked or deleted? These questions help organizations map out where they're vulnerable and what needs protection. Once risks are identified, the next step is to define clear objectives. For example, do we want to reduce the phishing-related incidents by 50% this year? Do we need to meet regulatory requirements like HIPAA, PCI DSS, or GDPR? Clear goals help shape policies that are targeted and realistic. Then comes the work of actually drafting the policies. This might include rules for password management, data classification, remote access, device usage, and more. Two key policies you'll find in almost every organization are the incident response policy and the acceptable use policy. The incident response policy is your organization's playbook for what to do if something goes wrong. Who needs to be notified? What systems should be isolated? How should evidence be collected? It's not something you want to be figuring out in the middle of a crisis. A good plan includes defined roles, step-by-step procedures, and clear communication channels, both internally and externally. The acceptable use policy lays out how employees are allowed to use company systems and data. It spells out what's okay and what's not, like using work laptops for personal streaming, downloading unapproved software, or connecting to unsecured Wi-Fi. This policy also helps protect the company legally in the case of misuse. Once drafts are ready, they're reviewed by key stakeholders: IT, management, legal, and HR, and then approved and rolled out. But roll out doesn't mean dropping a PDF in everyone's inbox. Effective implementation requires clear communication and training, so people understand not only what the policies say, but why they matter. And that brings us to the heart of this section: training and awareness. Even with the best policies in the world, if no one follows them, or worse, no one knows they exist, they're useless. That's why employee security awareness training is a critical part of any security strategy. This training isn't boring PowerPoints once a year. The most effective programs are ongoing, engaging, and tailored to people's roles. A developer doesn't need the same training as a receptionist, and someone in HR might need more in-depth content around handling personal data. One of the most powerful tools in training today is simulation. Companies send out fake phishing emails to see who clicks, not to shame people, but to identify where people need more help, and to normalize reporting mistakes without fear. It's not about punishment, it's about learning and improving. A good training program also includes feedback loops. If an employee finds something confusing or unrealistic, they should be able to speak up. Maybe a policy needs clarification, or maybe the training example is outdated. Security is an evolving field, and training should evolve with it. To boost participation, some companies are now adding gamification or small incentives, like quizzes, leaderboards, or even just coffee gift cards for completing the training. It might seem small, but it works. When employees feel engaged, they're more likely to retain the information and apply it. And leadership plays a huge role here too. When executives and managers are visibly involved, attending sessions, asking questions, it reinforces the policies. It signals to everyone that security matters. In contrast, when leadership ignores training or bypasses policy, others take that as a cue to do the same. So what are the outcomes of all of this work? Organizations that invest in security policies and training typically see stronger overall security posture, systems are better protected, and employees are more confident in handling threats. Fewer incidents. With more awareness, there are fewer accidental data leaks, phishing clicks, and policy violations. Improved compliance. Whether it's HIPAA, GDPR, or other standards, a well-trained workforce helps maintain legal and regulatory alignment. A great example of this comes from the healthcare sector. In response to growing threats and tighter regulations, a major hospital system in California launched a quarterly training program with short 10-minute videos focused on real-world scenarios. Over a 12-month period, phishing click rates dropped by over 70%, and incident reports from staff doubled, meaning more threats were caught early. That's the power of smart training. And remember, security isn't just an IT issue, it's an organizational cultural issue. Policies and training help build a culture where everybody understands their role in keeping data safe and systems secure. Security is never done. New threats emerge, technologies change, and people come and go. That's why policies should be reviewed regularly, updated to reflect current needs, and re-communicated to the staff. Ongoing training should be part of the organizational rhythm, not a box to check off once a year. When policies are clear, training is effective, and leadership supports both, the organization becomes more resilient. Not just to today's threats, but whatever comes next. By now, you've seen that network security is more than just a technical checklist. It's a mindset, a strategy, and a shared responsibility. We started by talking about physical security, which forms the literal foundation of protecting digital assets. Security cameras, motion detectors, access control systems, and even architectural features like man-traps work together to make sure only the right people can get close to your infrastructure in the first place. Then we moved into logical territory with authentication and access controls. Whether it's passwords, biometrics, multi-factor authentication, or centralized identity management systems, these tools are designed to make sure that even if someone tries to access a network from halfway around the world, they still must prove they belong. And when they do get in, proper authorization ensures that they can only do what they're supposed to. Accounting systems round it out by keeping a detailed log of who did what, when, and where. From there, we explored the wide world of network attacks, from phishing and ransomware to man-in-the-middle attacks and zero-day exploits. These threats are constantly evolving, but with the right tools and strategies like firewalls, intrusion prevention systems, software updates, and most importantly, user awareness, organizations can significantly reduce their risk. And finally, we talked about the glue that holds it all together, policy and training. Even the best tools fail without clear rules and knowledgeable users. That's why creating strong, clear, and enforceable policies backed up by regular, relevant, and realistic training isn't just a formality. It is an essential part of building a resilient security culture. If there's one big idea to walk away with, it's this. Network security is not just a job for IT. It's a team sport. It involves people, policies, processes, and technologies working together. No single tool or person can stop every threat, but when each piece is aligned and everyone understands their role, organizations can build a layered, adaptive defense that stands up to even the most sophisticated attacks. Whether you're headed into a career in IT, business, or another field entirely, having a strong foundation in network security will serve you well. Because no matter where you go or what you do, you'll be connected. And so will the risks. Now we've covered the what, why, and how of securing networks, you're better prepared to recognize threats, apply defenses, and think critically about the systems around you. And that's exactly where good cybersecurity starts.